of Gen Z at 9 a.m. this morning. We're chatting pretty casually today about who Gen Z, who this generation is, what they know, what they need. And for all the folks in the room, I see a lot of faculty, I see a lot of administrators. So I think this will be a really nice conversation for all of us. Marta, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Marta Bladek. Super librarian is not my official title. It's a title that Nancy has bestowed.
I coined for her.
But I'm here on behalf of the library because just like Nancy's office, we really work a lot with first-year students. And we thought that partnering up with Nancy, who's the Associate Director of First Year Programs, we're going to be able to share some of our insights, some of the actual data that we know about our students, and engage you in a conversation about who our Gen Z students are and how do we work with them in an efficient way that serves them the best.
Thanks, Marta. And I'm Nancy Yang. I'm the Associate Director for First Year Programs. I lead the wraparound services for incoming first year students. So lots of their experiences in the summer, starting with Summer Bridge and preparing them for the fall semester, through the fall semester with their first year seminar education requirement, skill development, the first year showcase, giving and immersing them really in experiences that make them feel like they belong in this academic space and are ready to move on to their sophomore journey, where I hand it over to my colleague, Jessica Stevens, who I don't know if she's here yet today, but she's the Associate Director for sophomore programs. So we're trying to create this sort of academic foundations, rather seamless introduction to college, moving on to when you're going through survival mode, and then moving on to your sophomore year where you're really thriving and then going on to do fantastic things. So that's a little bit about us. We'd love to see in chat just a little bit about you, anything you want to share, but in particular, what drew you to this session? Besides the snappy title that one of my Gen Z staff helped us come up with.
Morning. Everybody's so quiet.
Hi, Carol. Well, we're typing in chat. You want to type in chat with us? You want to say hi to the room?
Wait, say that again, Nancy?
We're typing it. We're introducing ourselves in chat.
Okay.
Good morning, Carol.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we're asking folks what drew them to this session.
And I think, Nancy, we also wanted to hear, so we can assess ourselves later on, what is it you're hoping to get from the conversation? What kind of questions do you bring to us and to other faculty members?
So Jay is calling me out that I recommended this session.
I saw that.
To my first year seminar faculty. Jonathan's been teaching upperclassmen for years, and he's teaching freshmen now. So more to learn about this new group that's coming in. I have a lot to share about them. Yeah, so Tarun is saying that we don't know what we don't know about our students. I'm going to share some information about our incoming freshman class, so that should be helpful to many of you. Carol was mentioning how to best support their success and learning. And Betty wants to know more about this group of young adults. Absolutely. So I hope that chat feels like a safe space for folks. You know, we're a group of 28 here, so it's hard to call on folks to unmute and speak during this short time, but please feel free to use chat to share your reactions and thoughts, and anything that comes up as we're speaking. We'll also ask you to respond to some things as we go on and move through the slides. Hi, Yolanda. She's teaching a introductory course and want to learn more about this group of students. Jay is trying to get his head around the character of students who come up through COVID. Absolutely. Yes. He was away teaching for 3 years and came back last year lots of surprises. He's teaching 100 and 200 level students. So lots of Gen Zers in his group, indeed. Okay, so we are going to move on here. And we thought, since we're talking about generations, we're going to focus on Gen Z, of course, but we thought we'd start our conversation today with a bit of a laugh. Some of you might recognize this Instagram profile, Champagne Cruise. And let me click here. Bear with me for 1 second so I can share this screen.
No call. We could just handle it here. We really don't need a meeting for this. Maybe we could just huddle. Not sure what this means exactly, but he's on active status. Let me just give him a ring. If free to give the update. Let me just draft up a well-documented email, and if anything, it's paper trail. Okay. Didn't answer. Let me try again. There you are. I just thought it'd be a little bit easier if we just chatted it through. Not jumping on a call. I don't want to see you. You don't need to see me. I don't even want to Slack you. I will send you the damn file when I'm done with it. We don't need to do a call. We don't need to do a call. We can just handle it here. We really don't need a meeting for this. Maybe we could just huddle. Not sure what this means exactly.
Okay. I hope you all got a laugh out of that the way that we did. What about that video resonates with you? Which one would you be when you communicate at work? Tell us in chat. Who are you when you communicate at work?
Zoom.
Carol. Carol says clearly the boomer. Brian, do you think you might be able to help Bernadette? I think she's having some Zoom issues here. Here is the Gen Z millennial. BB said, oh, boomer, so proud. Exclamation point, mock boomer, JX, Gen X for sure. A mixed X. That is fantastic. Jonathan is apparently a millennial. I am actually an old millennial, but the Gen Xer really resonates. When he said paper trail, I said, that's it. I'm dead. That's exactly who I am. Marta, which one do you resonate most with?
I just want to say that I don't recall my passcode for my office phone. So I guess that says voicemail on phone. It's not exactly my thing. Yeah. Emails. Yeah. Or just face-to-face.
Yes. Yes. So what do we see in the millennials and Gen Zers that we don't see in the boomers and Gen Xers in this particular parody? What was the trend that he's trying to communicate?
If you refresh, what are the age? I get Gen Z and Gen X and millennials confused. Who's which age?
Oh yes, if you'll hold that thought for a sec, Carol, Marta has a whole slide.
Yeah.
With the year brackets. Anyone want to share their thoughts on what the trend was? Oh, yes, an unwillingness to show your work. Very interesting. Patrice, happy to have you at any time. Changing traditional approaches of what professional looks like. So all the Champagne Cruise generations seems to think that this is the way that they want to behave as a professional, but things certainly are changing. Tarun's mentioning shorter shortest, most efficient form of communication. We're going from a whole Zoom call, a phone call, those kinds of, or in-person interactions, to if I can just get you the shortest message on Slack, I'm going to do that instead. Absolutely. Real-time interactions versus asynchronous. So there might be some valuing of real-time interactions in the Boomer and Gen X generations that Gen Zers just don't find as valuable or as fulfilling. And Jay's mentioning increasing reliance on external corporate technology. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so we are going to move on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a very quick outline or of where we are heading. And since a lot of our presentation includes the kind of interactive back and forth that Nancy was just engaging it, I think in spots, Nancy, we need to kind of be more efficient and speed things up. So you will hear from us about the library first year programs. I'll sum up quickly what research says about Gen Z, focusing on the less known areas that seem to be relevant to us here at John Jay. And then Nancy will share what she found out by serving our incoming students. And lastly, we will invite you to join us in thinking about how we can actually help our Gen Z students thrive at John Jay.
Thank you, Marta. And just like a Gen Zer, I really could have used the help with the timekeeping. All right, so let's get to know first year programs in the library really quickly. My team and I are among the first at John Jay to welcome the entering Gen Zers because we're working for the incoming first year students. And because of that, we're particularly interested, curious about, and passionate about what it will help this incoming group thrive, making things feel really relevant. We've designed, for instance, our Summer Bridge program, helping students, preparing students to transition to college life with an entire Mario Brothers theme, so that learning feels like it can absolutely be fun and gamified, but the students really belong in these academic spaces. Similarly, for first year seminars, I just met with just my fabulous group of first year seminar faculty yesterday. And we're just spending time talking about what will help students be successful, what they need, what we've noticed over the years, and having these ongoing conversations to really help our students. We celebrate their research and creativity at the end of the first semester. We help them develop academic skills, and we help them cultivate this exploring nature of what it means to be an advocate for justice at John Jay, true to the mission, and also why it is that they're pursuing college now. In terms of careers and professional postgraduate endeavors, we want to make sure that students continue to see that in our first year programming, they know this is helping them be better professionals in the future, that they will be more marketable in the future, and so on.
And when it comes to the library, we are honored to be, for a lot of our students, their first experience, their first encounter with a library. An academic library is a very different animal than a school or public library. But as it happens, due to New York State regulations, for quite a while, a lot of high schools got rid of their library centers. They're being reintroduced, but for quite a long time, we got high school incoming first year students who did not have experience with a library. So when they come to us, it's our chance to make them appreciate and know how to use the library and its resources for their advantage. We also notice from our in-library use surveys that we do every 3 years since 2010, that first year students are actually quite frequent visitors to the library. So they find our way and use the library consistently. One of the reasons for that may be that we have been working closely with courses at the 100th level. So we do it specifically to get hold of new students and to kind of seize the opportunity to show them the library as one of the many academic resources that they can take advantage of. What do we offer first-year students? First of all, it's our physical space that is very much appreciated, as I will allude to later. But also, lots of our resources are now available online, including librarian assistance with research assignments, research questions, and so on.
Thank you, Marta.
Okay. So now we will move on to a brief section about what do we know about Gen Z. And before I invite you to take a look with me at some of the highlights of the research, I just want to start with the caveats about generational research. So first of all, generation as a term is not a scientifically, it's not clearly defined concept itself. So that's one of the critiques that generational cohort conversations are receiving a lot from people skeptical about the insights such a research can offer. The other thing is that if we talk about distinct generations, what it is we really are focusing on is the differences, right? That's where the juice is. So in our conversations today, we're doing the same thing. We're not highlighting the ways in which, John Jay students 20 years ago were similar to the students we have today. Instead, we're going to be highlighting that's what's different, which of course, highlighting distinction overlooks the fact that, guess what? As generations, we share some things, right? And importantly, for our John Jay context, generational research and the stereotypes and characteristics that we keep hearing about do tend to kind of skew upper class and white. And I think that's very relevant for us to keep in mind. The last thing I want to point out is that the data that researchers are grasping is one specific point in time. Right now, we're talking about Gen Z, which happens to be a cohort of young people. Who they are today, their attitudes, their beliefs, their behaviors and values may not remain the same 15 years from now. So it's with these caveats, Nancy, if we could take a look at what the generational timeline is. So officially, this is how we understand the timeline divisions between the silents, the boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Z. What struck me when I was looking at these is the fact that if indeed 1995, some other researchers point to 1997 as the beginning birth year of Gen Z, if indeed we take the early date of 1995, we at John Jay have been working with Gen Zs since about 2013, right? So they're not necessarily new to us as a generational cohort. At the same time, I think you'll agree with me that the Gen Z students we might have had in 2015 are not the Gen Z students we are welcoming today in 2023. Okay. So the next slide just quickly presents some of the Gen research highlights that I kind of pulled out from multiple sources. We do include a bibliography at the end of our slides. So what's pertinent to us and what reflects what we see at CUNY, at John Jay, is that Gen Z is indeed the most diverse generation yet. I read that it's actually the last generation where the white population will be in the majority. But I think that majority is still only at 55%. Future generations will not be kind of similar to what we have seen before in terms of their diversity increasing over time. Importantly, Gen Zs, so far, when it comes to their educational attainment trends, are shaping up to be the most educated generation. The percentage of Gen Z students and young adults who aspire and who are getting college education at this point suggest that that will be the greatest percentage of college educated Americans that we are looking towards having. This one is an obvious one that we all know, that this is the generation.
Before you move on, sorry, BB has a question that it is what you're sharing about no longer being the white majority.
That's the overall population.
Overall number. That's the generation's overall number.
Correct. When it comes to the steeped in technology, what I thought interesting was that it's not just what we think of young people as being perfectly comfortable on their phone, living on screens, but the K through 12 context has really migrated onto our tech platform to an unprecedented extent. And this is what we see when we work with students entering John Jay. The next one, I thought maybe a new trend among Gen Z overall, the fact that students, when they enter colleges, when they choose their majors, they are driven by their career aspirations. I feel like at CUNY, at John Jay, that has been something that we're all familiar with for quite a while, not limited to Gen Z. Being an engine of social mobility, that's what CUNY has long prided itself on. The being okay with saying they're not okay points to the fact that mental health issues, mental well-being, and so on are now receiving way more attention, and they're also being talked about to a greater extent than they have in the past. And indeed, as the conversation after lunchtime that we're having today highlights, it's something that in our college setting, we're also dealing with and working with.
Marta, can you pause for a moment? I just want to hear folks' thoughts in the chat too about this particular bullet, okay with saying they are not okay. Right after, as we transitioned to fully online teaching during the pandemic, we saw very visibly that students were not okay, and they were still trying their best to be okay, or at least look okay. When we started teaching hybrid again, I had a student in my class write an email to me and say, "Professor, I won't be making it to class today. I'm taking a mental health day." So tell me in chat if you've gotten some of this from your students. I'm taking a mental health day. I had never heard a student explicitly share that this is why they were taking a break. I would either, they either wouldn't show up, or I hear family emergency a lot. I don't know whether or not it is family emergency, but for the first time I heard a student say mental health day. So then I saw more students sharing that with me. And my old millennial self at first was taken aback by this. I said, well, we need to power through. We need this education is really important, et cetera, right? But then I thought, I love this for them, right? In a growing, in a world where there's so much going on, I love now that students are just very clear and explicit with me and themselves that I'm not okay. I'm going to share with you. I trust you to know this about me. I'm going to take a break and I'm going to come back refreshed and sort of better than ever. Folks, thank you, Carol. The Chancellor closed classes for a university side mental health day, so that this awareness that we all need a break, and let's model what it means to take a break, really important. But would love to hear from folks in the chat too if you've experienced this from students as well. Go ahead, Marta.
Yeah, the last thing that stood out for me is the fairly dramatic drop in the amount of time Gen Z cohort is spending with their peers, just hanging out, socializing, doing things together. I have to say that the specific data that this point comes from was collected prior to the pandemic. So I don't know how the pandemic has affected that trend that emerged as a huge change since the millennial generation. And it also strikes me like here at John Jay, with all of the programming and activities that Nancy's office and other units are working towards, it's something that we're actively trying to remedy and promote the sense of belonging, the opportunities for students to come together.
Thank you, Marta. Maki is also sharing that many students have conveyed that they're struggling with their mental health. So again, okay with saying that, okay. Bernadette has had similar experiences. Paul shares that some take mental health day, but they are responsible for contacting team members and making up work, absolutely. But others take the mental health day and then just sort of close their eyes and don't realize there are consequences behind that. Jay is sharing that the other side of this is that they do not expect to be held accountable for the work that results in education. His experience has been that they expect to be forgiven when they say mental health, and it's unclear whether or not they seek support or just want to take time away. And for the students who were in classes with us during the pandemic, we were also very lenient, right? We were lenient with ourselves, we were lenient with our students, and it's possible that they have sort of gotten used to that, and a change, a shift needs to happen a little bit more explicitly. And I think that it's a great thing that students feel safe enough to tell us what's going on. But I think in agreement with many of you, what does it look like for catching up, and what does it look like to still be held accountable for what needs to be done to earn that grade? Yeah, and Jonathan is also mentioning, how do we reconcile mental health and wellness with firm deadlines? When deadlines seem immovable, how do we sort of plan for that and help students deal with that? Okay, thank you all for sharing in chat. Next up, we're going to share a bit about our incoming John Jay Gen Zers. So these are our incoming first year students in particular. And we, so this is just a snapshot of who our entering first years are. As of Tuesday, we had a little bit over 1,900 students enrolled, and we should be expecting at least 2,000 by the time the semester starts. That's our incoming class, much larger than it was last year. And nearly all of them are within the Gen Z birth range. Not surprising for us. We're a pretty traditional first year. We have a pretty traditional first year population. So the birth ranges for this incoming cohort will see 17 to 24-year-olds, but the majority of them were born in 2005. So those are our 18 or so year olds. So thinking about where they were during the pandemic, they would have started their high school experience at the height of the pandemic. And we are going to share some information that students have shared with us. And as of Tuesday, we had 712 respondents to our Summer Bridge Getting to Know You survey. The students answered 25 questions, and these were based, many of them were based off of the BESI, Beginning College Student Survey of Student Engagement, which is a national survey that many institutions use. This particular one, though, measures prior experience, prior academic experience, so in high school and so on, and students' expectations as a new student in college. So what they think things will be like when they're in college. And Marta and I thought it would be kind of fun for all of us if we did this sort of as a trivia game. So I hope everyone is ready to type and engage with us. I'm going to share, Marta and I are going to take turns sharing a question that we asked students. We're going to ask you to take a guess at some potential responses, and then we're going to reveal the actual responses. So of the 25 questions, we pulled out about 10 that we felt were particularly relevant to this conversation. So how many hours do you expect to spend preparing for class each week? So when we asked students this, which from A through E do you think most of the students expected to spend? Yeah. Oh, you all know how this game works. You all know. We've got some.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm seeing a lot of B's. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of B's. Wow. Okay. So again, just a reminder, this is the student's expectation, right? But I think you're making guesses based on what you've seen in your classrooms potentially. All right. So this is what they said.
Yay.
45%, so the majority, said that they are expecting to invest 11 to 20 hours preparing for class each week. Right? To be continued when we see them in the fall. This is for all, Sabi, this is for all classes during a 7-day period.
Okay, the next question we asked is something that is part of our ethos here at John Jay, meaning us being aware that a lot of our students have to work for pay and combine learning with work. So when asked about how many hours do you expect to work for pay each week, what do you think the trend was? Okay.
There's definitely, Maki's mentioning that there's definitely an expectation bias.
Yeah, okay.
Folks are leaning on the heavier side. Oh, okay. Yes. All right, shall I reveal?
Sure. Indeed, the most prevalent response was between 11 and 20 hours. And I have to say that having read about Gen Zs, that's another thing that I find is different from the overall idea versus to the students we work with. So it's often said that Gen Z as a cohort is less committed to working, either as teenagers or even in college, because they prioritize their academics, extracurricular, and so far. When it comes to our students, obviously, that's not always what they can afford to do, and work for pay 11 to 20 hours each week is a part of their daily life and managing those responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Bernadette, these are from the 712 respondents from that summer survey, and the population of students are all incoming first-year students. So, you know, based on how the question is worded, it's unclear if the expectation is they want to be working this number of hours,
they have to.
or if they already have a job where they're working this many hours. But it's helpful to capture this in the survey questions, because at least we see that in the students' vision of what their life will look like, they're spending this much time on academics and they're spending this much time working per week. All right. When asked which of the following do you expect to be the most difficult when you start your college experience? Learning course material, managing time, paying college expenses, getting help with schoolwork, making new friends, interacting with professors. All right. So we see so paying for college expenses, managing time is in the lead right now. B and C, okay, managing time, paying college expenses, yes. Jana, I think, is one of the first to say potentially A, learning course material. Paul's being really systematic with us. It's B, managing your time, and then paying college expenses, and then learning course materials. Natasha is sharing, I'm assuming from her own experience with students, potentially F, interacting with professors will be difficult, expected to be difficult. All right, let's see. Many of you in the chat were right. The expectation for students is that managing your time will be the most difficult, far more than anything else that we presented to them in the list. And it's possible that students feel very capable of learning new course material, but it's the regulation of focus and prioritization and their own time that feels really difficult. So first year programs has peer success coaches and programming workshops and so on to help students time block their week to be pretty specific about where their time goes in order to manage their time. We also spend a lot of our work helping students address and work with procrastination. So firstly, normalizing it, releasing the shame from that, but also what are the hacks that can help me focus some time and prioritize when I don't want to, when there are other interesting things to do. So something to keep in mind for your own courses. What are some things that you might be able to do in and outside of the classroom to help the attainment of course material, but first to help students structure their time and be a little bit more planful about how to proceed.
Yeah, and I'll say that this response, the rates of the responses called up for me and Nancy some doubts about students' professed, self-reported, and hope-infused expectations versus the reality that we have been seeing when working with students in the last couple of years. So here in specific, what we were wondering about, it's just the expected ease of getting help, asking help, and interacting with faculty. We'll come back to some of those discrepancies at the end, but I think, Nancy, right, that was the first answer that we were like, oh, they're saying something different than what we have seen.
Absolutely. And that is why I even shouted out Natasha's response, because I've seen many more students have their planners and know how to manage their time than those who are willing to talk to their professors when they face difficulty, right? I don't know how to reach out to them and all of these things, right? So I was also really surprised about the 3% in interacting with professors again. Next up.
So the next question that was asked was seeking to solicit students' willingness or tendency to ask for help. Who or what kind of service would they reach out to if they're dealing with stress, with challenges? So everyone says D, friends and our
This group is the best group of game players I've ever seen.
Okay.
Lots of D's,
Lots of
maybe
D's.
B, and then A.
Okay, so
Maybe some C.
Oh, D is definitely standing out among the faculty. Okay, so let's see what
Shall
they
we?
did say.
Okay. Where is my mouse? Okay.
Interestingly enough, seeking support from friends and family was less popular of an option than counting on campus resources and on teaching faculty, right? And I also have to say what's remarkable about this response rate to me is that they're just being asked that on the eve of starting their classes. And so they may not know about campus resources. They don't know their teaching faculty, and they don't know peer success coaches very well yet. And yet, at the same time, I think there's some high expectations that should give us pause. Meaning, if students are assuming not only that those services exist, but also that they will be able to meet their specific challenges.
And by the time we get to the end of the semester, we're hoping to offer a post survey for our students as well. We know that the peer success coach percentage will be much higher, but at this point, students don't quite know how powerful those peer success coaches can be just yet. And so they recognize campus resources, professors, friends, and other students. Marta and I were talking about being able for us in this room to lean on the students' preconceived notions that I'm supposed to use campus resources. I'm supposed to go and reach out to my professors when I have difficulties, right? This is the norm, and this is what I know that I'm supposed to do. Paul is asking about peer success coaches. In first year seminars, transfer seminars, and some select sophomore seminars, there's an embedded upper level, well-trained student who it supports the transition of students if they're coming in for the first time, supports goal setting, planning, exploration of areas of interest, and they partner with faculty in order to do that. There are many other peer programs across campus that may look slightly different. There are peers that are in offices with administrative duties. There are peers who run workshops, but our peer success coaches are embedded into the classroom and partner with faculty. And Paul, if you're interested in learning more, I'll share my contact information with you at the end. Maybe you're interested in teaching one of our members. Zabby and Kira, Marta, are interested in hearing more about the in-library survey.
Okay, so I'll mention that with an upcoming slide because it calls up something that's relevant to the library. And I also have to say, Nancy, these are fascinating, but
I know
we need to move more efficiently if we want to have time to hear people's thoughts about.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marta. All right, so when asked, where do you plan to do most of your assignments? Commute, at home, coffee shop, John Jay Library, campus lounge areas, and not sure yet.
B.
Mm-hmm. B, F, okay, yeah, not sure yet. D. Okay, yeah. E. Okay, and as folks are answering, I'm going to answer Jay's question because it's an important one. How generalizable are summer bridge students relative to the total population? Who are the 712 out of the 1900? All incoming first years who are not in a specialized cohort that is funded, where there's student funding, like SEEK, Honors, Apple Core, and ACE, are expected to complete our summer bridge. So this is widely generalizable because these students will be the ones who don't necessarily have a robust team of advisors and financial aid and things like that to support them. So this would be most of the students that you'd be encountering, and definitely those you're encountering in your first year seminar, Jay. All right, so shall we reveal?
Sure.
Marta, why don't you talk about the slide, because I think you have some things to say about that library piece.
Yeah, so that's what students' responses have been, and they're not surprising to me as a librarian. And that's where I bring up the In the Library Use Survey that we've been doing every 3 years since 2010. I was very happy, obviously, to see that the library is figuring prominently in incoming first-year students' mental map for where do you do your study, where do you do your academic work. And it's also not surprising because in our surveys, consistently for over a decade, we see that the #1 reason why students visit the library is so that they can study alone, so that they can study individually. That trend has not budged. We were expecting that what we saw in 2019, and then in a survey we did in 2022, will show us some kind of major change. There really was no change. Students continue to come and they find the library as the place where they can get their work done. Related to that, when we ask students what is the important or the most important aspect of the services the library provides, they tell us, and again, I mean, these are percentages in the 80–90%. Since 2010, the same thing. it's the most important thing that the library can provide me with a space where I can do my work alone. So we hope to see this cohort of students joining us in the library as well. And given how popular and how well liked the library spaces are, I would encourage you as classroom faculty to mention that to students, to call up our space as one of the locales where they could be happy and comfortable getting their academic assignments, doing their homework and reading done.
Yeah, and just because we see nearly 45% planning to do their assignments at home, it doesn't mean that that's the best place for them to do their assignments.
There's actually a research study that was organized into a book by two CUNY librarians. One of them is now the chief at the Graduate Center, that was looking at the study geographical maps of CUNY commuter students. And indeed, it involved students taking pictures at their home learning spaces, and so on. And as Nancy points out, very often those spaces are not necessarily conducive to allow for concentrated, focused amount of time to be able to get the work done. Hence, CUNY libraries, not just ours, is really a key aspect of the students' educational experience at CUNY.
Mm-hmm. Marta, do you want to answer Kira's question about are students using the library resources while studying in the library? Or is it the resources, or is it that it's a quiet spot that draws them?
We pair up all of those responses, and students pick from multiple options. So I would have to refer to this slides and the specific survey questions we have. I'm happy to provide the instruments. It's both, and we also frame, the response for the longest time, like using the library computers to get my academic work done. We can't know if students are always using the library specific resources or if they use the Do It applications and so on. And now, of course, all those things happens at once. But we do ask about those questions, and yet it really stands out. And it's not just our library trend that the library as space, even though the trend is to move everything to be available electronic, the library as space is key. I'll also add that the second most popular response, why do you come to the library in 2022, was to relax and to unwind. Again, using that specific vibe, that specific space to address some of the things we were talking about, some of the stresses, some of the mental health challenges that our students are contending with.
Thank you, Marta. Carol is asking if we remind students that they can use any CUNY library, even the ones that are closer to home. The peer success coaches in the seminar certainly do this, but I think it's good practice for all of us who are teaching and interacting with students as well. Maybe just put it in your syllabus, or remind students as you see them if they're looking.
Yeah, and especially I feel this year it's great to do, because unlike in the last couple of years where each campus has its own access protocols that were not always consistent, right now it does sound like everyone is welcome in the other CUNY libraries. I think the CUNY Law Library is its own animal, and the Graduate Center, but besides that, students have a wide array of options closer to their home.
Mm-hmm. So I just got a time check from TLC. We have 10 minutes left, and we do have a few other very interesting questions to share. So it looks like we may not be able to get to our last activity, but I recommend that folks are just chatting with us as we go through the slides, so we can just have a conversation about these points as we go along. Mm-hmm. Okay, is this mine, Marta? I think so. Yes. Okay, when asked, how would you prefer to do your class readings in order to, the actual question said, in order to remember the information? Which do you think students chose? Lots of A. Paul thinks B, then A. Oh, Jonathan thinks A is what they'll do, but B is what they'll answer. And some no preference. Oh, look at this. So students were able to choose multiple options, right? So it looks like it's not much of a difference in preference between the ebook, PDF, and print. Could come down to cost. Could the annotation tools on ebooks now are so much more powerful. So perhaps students are more aware of using those. I was surprised that we didn't see more audiobook interest or preference, but here it is. It may be something interesting for you to note as you are assigning readings in different modalities. Marta, do you want to add or shall we move on?
Sure. Like that finding was interesting to me, again, from the perspective of the library, as CUNY libraries overall have been investing and promoting heavily the move to online ebooks and so on. Whereas this makes total sense when we consider the convenience and the ability to serve students who are both on campus and online with one mode that suits both. The kind of embrace of online academic sources has been interesting in academic libraries. For example, I think this study that I looked at recently sums it up. So there was a university library that did the research and to gauge people preferences, faculty, and that happened to be grad students, when it comes to using ebooks or print books, and the same thing with academic journals. And they found that whatever the preference was 10 years ago seemed to be the same in 2022, right? So even though there's more and more of online content available, people are really sticking to their preference and print, because the complaints about online and e-versions of academic reading materials consistently point to the fact that people say it's easier to retain, it's easier to comprehend, which, by the way, that's what neuroscience research points to, especially Marianne Wolf from UCLA. She very eloquently talks about how it's different, the modality of the reading we do when it comes to learning. And people also like to take notes. We hear it from our students all the time. They like highlights. And there's also the issue in terms of online ebooks, and especially textbooks, e-textbooks, in terms of privacy and how much tracking a publisher is giving. So that's been giving pause to teaching faculty and perhaps also the users of those resources.
I love the responses that we're getting in chat. If folks didn't notice Paul's comment about perusal, it is a well-loved online annotation tool that instructors and students really enjoy using, and it's probably one of the best out there. So if you are interested in browsing a great online annotation tool and potentially using it with your students, you could do group annotation and things like that, and it's sort of what their claim to fame. And lots of folks are talking about the learning outcomes and being able to retain information better and read longer. But when I was looking at the research, and maybe this is a conversation for another time, it comes down to sort of the ability to actively read too, and it's much easier to mark up print many years ago. But at this point, I mean, med students only use ebooks because of the robust annotation tools that are out there. So I'm really curious for more current research on what retention and learning looks like with all of these new tools, in reading. Jonathan has a question about perusal being free for CUNY students, and I'm not sure. Maybe Paul can answer that in chat. If not, we can find out. Okay, Marta.
Okay, and that might be the last query, Nancy, that we address. But that's something that we are very familiar with. Joan Jay being the college of choice for first generation students. So what do you think the responses were to this question? A, Okay, so it's between A, yes, first in the family to attend college, or no, one or more attended but did not complete. Huh? Okay, so
Okay,
let's see
reveal.
how it shaped up. Yes. So interestingly enough, and that's something that Nancy and I were chatting about, the largest portion of the pie, with the suggestion that one or more family members attended college but have not completed it, it doesn't give us a good sense of how long did they attend, how far along did they get, but it's an interesting thing to keep in mind that 31%
Yeah,
of our
just
students come from families where they're really the first to go to college. And
yeah.
then there's a large portion of students from families where the notion and the experience of being a college student may have been somehow already present.
And interesting to think about what this means in terms of resources and awareness of how to thrive as a college student. I don't want to disappoint folks, so let me just get to this last question here because I think it's interesting for our group. How long is your commute to campus?
Yeah.
Jonathan said that Cardi B lasted 2 semesters in college.
Yeah.
Okay, C is the overwhelming. Okay, let's see. So less than 30 minutes, between 30 minutes to an hour and an hour. More than an hour to 2 hours. So thinking about how far your students travel, how exhausted they will be in between commutes, and things like that is worth investigating. We did not get a chance to talk about best practices to serve students knowing this about our Gen Zers. And Marta, I'm wondering if maybe we'd be interested in partnering with TLC again to do a follow-up if folks in chat would be interested in that. So chat folks, would you let us know? There was a part of this that we wanted to be much more active, that you would share some best practices and we would just brainstorm and do things together. If there are enough folks that are interested, we can absolutely do that. Okay, all right. Thank you for the love. We appreciate all of your enthusiasm, and I'm sorry that we did not get a chance to get to the last part.
But I have to say that for those of us on campus, there's coffee and cookies happening right now. So that might also be a place to chat about Gen Z and how to work with them.
Yes, absolutely. Rely on that community. So, okay, we're gonna, that's our bib. We're gonna share the slides, but please take a picture of this or just mark down our email addresses. Marta and I can talk about Gen Zers forever. So please email us, chat with us. Let us know if you want to teach with me and my first year seminar group. We thank you so much for your time and attention and just all the enthusiasm, and we hope you enjoy the rest of Faculty Development Day.
Thank you. Where are they now? Coffee, cookies. Okay.
Marta's on campus. She might be there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol.